You always sit here, right? The guy in my seat said it like we knew each other, and for a second, I just stood there with my laundry basket digging into my hip, wondering how a complete stranger had noticed something that small about me. It was Sunday night, raining hard enough to make the laundromat windows look blurry, and I was already in a bad mood. My jeans were damp at the cuffs. My hoodie smelled like wet pavement. I had a client waiting on a logo revision they definitely weren't paying enough for. All I wanted was to throw my clothes into the washer, sit in my usual cracked blue chair in the corner, and disappear into my book for 45 minutes. That was the whole plan. Then I walked in and found him sitting there. Tall, broad shoulders, black t-shirt under a dark work jacket, tattoos covering both arms like they belonged there more than skin did, silver ring on one hand, a scar through one eyebrow. He looked like the kind of guy who could make a room go quiet without trying. And I, apparently, looked like a guy who had just lost custody of a chair. He stood halfway up, glancing from me to the seat. Sorry, I didn't mean to steal it. I blinked. It's not. It's not actually mine. His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. Yeah, but you always sit here. My stomach did this small, stupid drop. Not dramatic. Just enough to make me aware of my own body. You noticed that? He shrugged and grabbed the duffel bag beside him, moving it off the chair. Hard not to. Same time every week. Same book. Same annoyed face when dryer 3 starts making that noise. I should have laughed like a normal person. Instead, I looked at dryer 3, which was currently thumping like it had a brick inside it, then back at him. Okay, that dryer deserves my attitude. This time he did smile. Just a little. And honestly, that made things worse. Because he looked intimidating until he smiled. Then he looked warm in a way I was not prepared for. Seat's yours. You don't have to move. Feels wrong now. He stepped aside, like this was settled, like giving up a chair to a stranger was just part of his Sunday routine. I sat down because standing there any longer would have made it weird. Or weirder. He took the chair next to mine, leaving enough space between us that it didn't feel pushy. Still, I could feel him there. Not touching me. Not even looking at me directly now. Just present. Solid. Too close for someone I didn't know. I shoved my clothes into a washer and tried to act casual, which mostly meant dropping one sock, picking it up too fast, and almost hitting my head on the machine door. Great. Amazing first impression. Not that I cared. I didn't. Obviously. What are you reading? He asked, nodding toward the paperback in my hand. I looked down like I'd forgotten I had it. A mystery. Any good? The detective is bad at his job, but I'm committed now. A quiet breath of laughter left him. That sounds personal. It is. I've given him 6 chapters to find one obvious clue. He leaned back, arms folding loosely, tattoos shifting under the laundromat lights. Rough night for him. Rough night for all of us. The room went quiet after that, but not in a bad way. Machines hummed. Rain tapped against the glass. Somewhere near the vending machine, an old man argued with a coin slot under his breath. I expected the silence to end things. It didn't. The guy glanced at my washer, then at the row of dryers. Don't use 5 either. What? Dryer 5. Runs hot for 10 minutes, then gives up on life. I stared at him. You have laundromat opinions. I have laundromat trauma. That got me. I laughed before I could stop myself, and his eyes flicked to my face like he'd been waiting to see if I would. For a second, neither of us said anything. His gaze stayed a little too long. Not enough to call out. Just enough for my chest to tighten. Then he looked away first. I told myself it meant nothing. People looked at people. People noticed chairs. People warned strangers about broken dryers. That didn't mean anything. I'm Ethan, by the way. I don't know why I said it. Maybe because he'd already noticed too much for us to stay total strangers. He turned back. Mason, you come here every Sunday too? Usually. After work. Where do you work? He nodded toward the street. Motorcycle shop 3 blocks down. Of course he did. Of course the tattooed guy with the quiet voice fixed motorcycles. That felt almost unfair. That explains the... I waved vaguely at his arms, then immediately wanted to die. Sorry, that was not a sentence. Mason looked down at his tattoos like he'd forgotten they were there. The scary mechanic thing? I didn't say scary. You thought it. My neck warmed. Maybe for like 2 seconds. Only 2. Don't push it. His smile came back, small and slow, and I had to look at my book like the fake detective had suddenly become fascinating. We talked after that. Not nonstop. Just in pieces. He told me the shop stayed open late on Sundays because people always remembered their bikes were broken at the worst possible time. I told him I did freelance design, which sounded cooler than spending 6 hours arguing with a client about whether navy blue was too emotional. He remembered that. Actually listened. When my washer buzzed, he stood before I did and nodded toward the dryer row. 6 is open. Use that one. You're really serious about this. I'm saving you from disappointment. I reached for my laundry basket at the same time he did. Our hands almost touched. Almost. Still, my heart reacted like we had done something much worse. Mason noticed. Of course he did. His fingers paused on the handle, then pulled back. Sorry. No, it's fine. Too fast. Too obvious. I moved the clothes myself, pretending my pulse wasn't suddenly in my throat. By the time my clothes were dry, the rain had softened outside. Mason packed his stuff slowly, like he wasn't in a hurry to leave. I wasn't either, which was annoying, because I had known him for less than an hour. At the door, he held it open for me. See you around, Ethan. Hearing my name in his voice did something stupid to my stomach. Yeah, see you. I walked home telling myself it was nothing. Just a guy at a laundromat. Just a chair. Just a normal conversation on a rainy Sunday night. But the next week, when I pushed open the laundromat door at the same time, Mason was already there, sitting in the chair beside mine, and my cracked blue seat was empty. He looked up, calm as anything, and said, "Saved your spot. Saved your spot." Mason said it so casually, like he had not just made my entire chest forget how to work. I stood by the door with my laundry bag over one shoulder, rainwater still clinging to my jacket, trying very hard not to look as pleased as I felt. The cracked blue chair was empty. His duffel was on the floor beside his own chair. And on top of the washing machine, next to him, sat a canned coffee. The cheap vanilla kind from the vending machine. That better not be for me, I said, because apparently sarcasm was all I had when my body started acting stupid. Mason glanced at the can. It is, actually. Why? You stared at it for like 20 seconds last week and then bought water instead. I opened my mouth. Closed it. That was worse than the chair. The chair was one thing. The coffee meant he had paid attention to something I did not even remember doing. Maybe I was judging it. His mouth tilted. Were you? A little. Good. It is terrible. I picked up the can anyway, mostly because refusing would have made me look too affected. It was cold against my palm. My fingers felt clumsy around it. So you bought me terrible coffee? I bought you an experience. I laughed under my breath and dropped my bag near the washer. You always this generous with strangers? Mason leaned back, watching me load clothes like it was somehow interesting. Are we still strangers? That should not have hit the way it did. It was just a question. Simple. Normal. But the laundromat suddenly felt too quiet, even with the dryers thumping and the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I shoved a hoodie into the washer and kept my eyes down. I mean, I know your name and your dryer trauma. That is a strong foundation. Practically a friendship. Practically. He said it softer than the joke needed, and I hated how fast I noticed. I sat in my chair once the washer started, holding the canned coffee between both hands like I needed something to do. Mason did not crowd me. He never did. That was the weird part. He gave me space, but still made the space feel shared. Long week? He asked after a minute. I let out a breath. A client told me the logo I made was too blue. Mason blinked. Too blue. Yeah. Emotionally. What does emotionally blue mean? I have no idea, Mason. I just work here. His laugh came out low and warm, and for some reason, hearing it made the stress in my shoulders loosen a little. I told him about the client, the deadlines, the apartment upstairs that always smelled like burned toast. He listened like the details mattered. Not fake listening either. Real listening. The kind where he looked at me when I talked, but not so hard it felt like pressure. At one point, he remembered I hated dryer 3 and reached over with one finger to point at a machine that had just opened. 6 is free. You are really committed to keeping me emotionally safe from appliances. Somebody has to. I stood, dragging my wet clothes out of the washer. Before I could grab the basket, Mason was already there, holding it steady. Our hands brushed on the plastic handle. Barely anything. A second, maybe less. But he did not move right away. Neither did I. His thumb was close to mine. Close enough that if I shifted even a little, it would have looked intentional. My pulse jumped into my throat. Mason's eyes dropped to our hands, then back to my face. The air between us tightened. Not loud. Not obvious. Just there. I pulled back first, because of course I did. Thanks. My voice sounded almost normal. Almost. Mason nodded and stepped away, but there was something different in his expression now. Like he had noticed me noticing him. Like he had felt it too and decided not to make it easy for me. I dumped my clothes into dryer 6 too aggressively. A sock fell on the floor. Perfect. Mason picked it up before I could, holding it between 2 fingers with a serious face. This yours? No. I bring random socks here to create mystery. Bold hobby. I took it from him, and this time our fingers touched for real. Quick. Warm. Nothing. It meant nothing. That was what I told myself while my chest tightened like a liar. By the time my clothes were dry, the rain had stopped. Mason walked with me to the door, one hand in his jacket pocket, the other holding his duffel over his shoulder. Outside, the sidewalk shined under the streetlights. Same time next week? He looked at me when he said it. Not at the door. Not at the ring. Me. I tried to shrug like my answer had not already been sitting in my chest all night. Yeah, probably. Mason's smile was small, but it stayed. I will save your spot. I walked home with warm laundry against my side, and that terrible coffee still half full in my bag. I told myself not to make it a thing. But by Wednesday, I caught myself thinking about Sunday. By Friday, I almost bought better coffee for him. And by Saturday night, I realized the worst part was not that Mason kept saving my seat. It was that I had started hoping he would. By the next Sunday, I had officially lost the argument with myself. I bought Mason coffee. Not the terrible vanilla kind from the vending machine. Real coffee. From the little place next to my apartment with the barista who always spelled my name wrong. I told myself it was because he bought me one first. That was normal. Balanced. Friendly. Completely reasonable. Except I stood in line for 8 minutes debating whether Mason seemed like a black coffee guy or a 2 sugars guy, which was not exactly casual behavior. When I walked into the laundromat, he was already there. Same chair beside mine. Same dark jacket. Same duffel bag by his boots. My seat was empty. Of course it was. He looked up, and for half a second his face changed before he could hide it. Like he had been waiting. Like seeing me actually did something to him. Then his eyes dropped to the coffee in my hand. Is that for me? I held it out before I could make it weird. Maybe. Mason took it, his fingers brushing mine around the cup. You bought me coffee? You bought me the worst coffee in America last week. I figured somebody had to fix the damage. He looked down at the cup, then back at me. Black. You seem like you hate joy. That got a laugh out of him. A real one. His shoulders loosened, and he shook his head like he was trying not to smile too much. That is disturbingly accurate. I sat down, proud of myself for sounding normal while my stomach was doing something embarrassing. For a while, it was easy. That was the dangerous part. We slipped into the routine like it had always belonged to us. I loaded the washer. Mason complained about a customer who tried to repair his own bike with duct tape. I told him my upstairs neighbor had burned toast again at 2 in the morning, and he looked genuinely offended on my behalf. You need to move. Are you offering to pay rent? I am offering emotional support against toast crimes. Very generous. He leaned back, coffee resting between both hands. Only for VIP Laundromat members. I glanced at him. And I qualify? Mason looked at me over the rim of the cup. You have a reserved seat. My brain went quiet for a second. It was such a small thing. A stupid joke. But he did not look away after saying it. Neither did I. The dryers kept spinning behind us. Someone's kid laughed near the vending machine. A woman folding towels glanced over at us, then smiled to herself in that way people do when they think they know something. I looked down first. Obviously. My neck went warm. You are weirdly serious about that chair. Mason's voice dropped just a little. Maybe it is not just the chair. I froze. Not in a dramatic way. I still had my hands wrapped around my book. Still heard the machines. Still smelled detergent and rain on people's jackets. But inside, everything stopped. I waited for him to laugh. To add something dumb. To give me the exit. He did not. Mason just stared at his coffee like he had surprised himself. The woman with the towels passed behind us, carrying her basket toward the door. You boys are cute, she said casually, like she was commenting on the weather. Nice to see somebody still doing Sunday dates. My soul left my body. Oh, we are not. I started way too fast. It is not a date. Mason did not say anything. That was the problem. He just looked at me. Not offended. Not amused. Just quiet. The silence after my denial felt louder than every machine in the place. The woman laughed softly. Sure, honey. Then she left, the bell over the door jingling behind her. I wanted to crawl inside dryer 6 and let it finish the job. Sorry, I muttered. That was weird. Mason set his coffee down. Which part? I blinked. What? Her saying it was a date? His eyes stayed on mine. Were you correcting her that fast? My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Because there was no safe answer. If I said the date part was weird, it sounded like Mason was weird. If I said correcting her was weird, then I had to admit I cared. I gave a weak laugh. You are making this very intense for a laundromat. His expression softened, but he still did not let me off the hook completely. You looked panicked. I was surprised. By being called cute. By being called anything with a stranger. Mason tilted his head. Still strangers? There it was again. That question. The one that made my chest feel too tight. I looked away, pretending to check the timer on my washer. 23 minutes left. Great. Trapped by laundry and emotional consequences. I do not know, I said finally. Honest enough to scare me. Mason was quiet for a moment. Then he reached toward the vending machine beside us, grabbed the small bag of chips sitting on top, and placed it near my book. My favorite kind. The kind I had bought twice and never mentioned. I stared at it. Mason, you always get those when you have a bad week. My throat went dry. I never told you that. You did not have to. He leaned back again, like he had not just ruined my ability to function. Like noticing me was easy. Like taking care of me in tiny, quiet ways was nothing. I tried to laugh it off. I really did. That is either sweet or mildly concerning. Can be both. His knee bumped mine under the row of chairs. Accidentally, maybe. But he did not move it away. And this time, neither did I. For almost 10 full seconds, we sat there like that, side by side, knee against knee, pretending to be calm. My heartbeat was ridiculous. I told myself it meant nothing. I told myself he was just friendly. I told myself a lot of things. But when Mason looked down at where we were touching, then back at me with that quiet, almost smile, I knew I was running out of lies. The first thing I noticed was that Mason was not wearing his jacket. The second thing I noticed was that he noticed me noticing. Rough weather, he said, like his arms were not right there under the laundromat lights, tattoos disappearing beneath the sleeves of a plain black t-shirt, like I was not suddenly very interested in putting detergent into the wrong machine. It is barely raining, I muttered, shoving quarters into the washer. It is Chicago. Barely raining still counts as weather. I tried to laugh, but it came out uneven. Since the woman had called us cute last week, everything felt different. Not because anything had changed out loud. Mason still saved my seat. I still pretended I was not relieved when I saw him. We still talked about broken appliances and annoying customers and bad coffee. But now there was this extra thing sitting between us. A question neither of us had answered. Mason had brought chips again. My favorite kind. He left them on my chair without making a show of it, which somehow made it worse. You do know this is how people get dependent, I told him, holding up the bag. His eyes flicked to mine. On chips. On free snacks. Good. One word. Calm. Too calm. My fingers tightened around the bag. Good. Mason leaned back in his chair, one ankle crossed over the other, watching me with that quiet look that always made me feel like he could see past whatever joke I was hiding behind. Means you might keep coming back. The air left my chest in a stupid, tiny way. I looked at the dryers because the dryers were safer. I have laundry, Mason. Every Sunday. Clothes get dirty every week. That is how clothes work. His mouth moved like he almost smiled, but he did not let the moment turn funny. Not all the way. Right. That was the problem with Mason. He did not push hard. He just said something soft enough to leave room, then watched to see if I would step into it. And I wanted to. That scared me more than if he had been obvious. We were folding clothes later when the rain got worse. Real rain this time. Heavy enough to blur the street outside and make the windows shake a little when the wind hit. The laundromat had mostly emptied out, leaving only us, a college kid asleep over his textbooks, and the owner in the back watching a baseball game on a tiny television. I reached for one of my shirts at the same time Mason reached for a towel that was not his. Our hands landed on the same warm pile. This time, neither of us moved. His fingers were against mine. Not fully holding. Not nothing either. I looked up. Big mistake. Mason was already looking at me. The drier heat made the air feel close. Or maybe it was him. He was standing closer than usual, close enough that I could see a faint grease mark near his wrist, close enough to notice the way his breathing changed when my fingers shifted against his. Ethan. My name sounded different when he said it like that. Lower. Careful. Like he was asking permission without asking anything at all. Yeah. It barely came out. Mason glanced down at our hands, then back to my face. Do you ever wonder if we are both pretending this is more casual than it is? My heart kicked so hard it almost hurt. There it was. Too direct to laugh off. Too honest to pretend I had not heard. I should have said something brave. I should have said yes. I should have told him I had been thinking about him on random Wednesdays and buying coffee I pretended was not for him, and caring way too much about whether one tattooed mechanic saved me a broken blue chair. Instead, I just stood there with my hand still touching his, frozen like the answer was trapped somewhere behind my ribs. Mason's thumb moved. Barely. A slow brush against the side of my finger. My entire body went quiet. I do not know, I whispered. It was a lie. Not a full lie. Worse. A coward's lie. Mason heard it anyway. His face softened, not disappointed exactly, but like he understood why I was scared. That made it harder. Okay. He started to pull back. I panicked. Not because he was leaving. Because I wanted him not to. My hand caught his before I could think. Actually caught it. His fingers went still in mine. The room seemed to shrink around us. Rain hit the glass. Somewhere behind us, the baseball announcer said something nobody cared about. Mason looked down at our hands, then up at me. The almost smile was gone now. He looked serious, almost nervous. That did something to me. Mason Reed, who looked like he could fix an engine in the dark and scare off trouble without raising his voice, looked nervous because I was holding his hand. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. His eyes dropped for half a second. Not in a way that felt rushed. Not in a way that felt unsafe. Just close. Like a thought passing between us that neither of us was ready to say out loud. He leaned in a little. I did not move away. My pulse was everywhere. My hand was still in his. For 1 second, I thought he might kiss me. For 1 second, I wanted him to. Then the college kid's phone alarm exploded across the room. We both jumped like we had been caught stealing. I dropped Mason's hand. He stepped back. The kid snorted awake, knocked over a bottle of detergent, and muttered, "Crap, sorry," while fumbling for his phone. I turned back to my laundry with burning ears, folding the same shirt twice because my brain had completely stopped working. Mason cleared his throat softly, reaching for his duffel. "Rain is pretty bad." "Yeah." "You walking?" "Yeah." He nodded toward the door, not looking at me at first. "I can drive you." I almost said no. Almost took the easy exit. Then he looked at me again, and the question from earlier was still there, waiting. Not forcing, just waiting. I swallowed. Okay. Mason held the door open for me when we left. Outside, the rain came down hard enough to soak the sidewalk in seconds. We ran to his truck, shoulders bumping, both of us laughing too quietly for how nervous we were. But when we got inside and the doors shut, the cab went still. Rain hammered the roof. Mason's hand rested near the gear shift. Mine rested on my laundry bag. There were only inches between us. He looked at me, and for a second, it felt like the laundromat had followed us in. The same warmth. The same almost. The same thing neither of us knew how to name. Then Mason looked forward and started the engine. "I will get you home." I nodded, staring out at the rain, pretending my hand did not still remember his. But halfway through the drive, I realized the dangerous part was not that Mason had almost crossed a line. It was that I had almost let him, and I was not sure I would stop him next time. The next Sunday, I wore Mason's hoodie to the laundromat. Not because I planned to. That would have been insane. I told myself it was practical. The rain had been coming down since lunch. My own hoodie was still damp from earlier, and his was hanging on the back of my desk chair looking warm and unfairly comfortable. So I put it on. That was all. A normal weather decision. Except the second I walked through the laundromat door, Mason looked up and forgot to hide his reaction. His eyes dropped to the hoodie first, then to my face. For one quiet second, he just stared. My stomach tightened. "It was raining," I said too quickly. Mason's mouth curved, but barely. I did not say anything. "Your face did." "My face is innocent." "Your face is extremely loud." He leaned back in his chair, still looking at me like the hoodie had answered a question he had been too careful to ask. "Looks better on you." I nearly dropped my laundry bag. "Do you say things like that on purpose?" Mason's smile faded into something softer. "Sometimes." "Great. Perfect. Terrible." I moved to the washers before my face betrayed me completely. For a while, everything felt almost normal again. Almost. Mason had saved my chair. He had bought chips. I had brought him coffee, black, because apparently that was just who I was now. We were trying to act like nothing had happened in his truck last week. Like we had not sat there in the rain with 2 inches of space between us and a silence full of every word we were avoiding. Then the bell over the door jingled, and a guy walked in wearing a leather jacket and work boots, shaking rain out of his hair. "Reed," he called. Mason's shoulders shifted. Not tense exactly. More guarded. The guy spotted him and came over with an easy grin, the kind of grin people use when they know they belong somewhere. "Thought I would find you here." Mason stood, taking one small step away from me. I noticed. I hated that I noticed. "Ethan, this is Caleb," Mason said, voice even. "He works at the shop." Caleb looked me over, not rude, but curious in a way that made my skin heat under the borrowed hoodie. His eyes paused there. Of course they did. "So you are the Sunday guy?" My chest tightened. Mason's jaw moved slightly. "Caleb." "What?" Caleb lifted both hands, laughing. "You talk about him every Monday." I was starting to think he was made up. I froze beside the washer. "Mason talked about me? At work? On Mondays?" Mason rubbed a hand over the back of his neck, and for the first time since I had met him, he looked genuinely embarrassed. "Ignore him." "No, no." Caleb leaned against the folding table, enjoying himself way too much. "This is great. I finally get it." "Get what?" I should not have asked. I knew that immediately. Caleb glanced between us. The saved chair. The coffee. The hoodie. Me standing there trying not to look like my pulse had doubled. "Nothing," he said, but the smile gave him away. Mason's expression hardened just enough to end the joke. "Did you need something?" That tone worked. Caleb straightened a little. "Yeah, shop thing. Vince wants to know if you can cover Tuesday." "And your dad called again." The change in Mason was small, but sharp. His face closed. Not all the way. Just enough that the warmth from a second ago disappeared like someone had opened a window. "I will call him later." Caleb's eyes flicked to me, then back to Mason. He sounded pissed. He usually does. The words were flat. Too flat. I looked down at the washer door, pretending not to hear, but the air had changed. Mason had become careful in a way I recognized. Not around me. Around being seen. Caleb must have realized he had stepped into something, because he cleared his throat and pushed away from the table. "All right. I am out." Before leaving, he gave me a quick nod. Softer this time. "Nice meeting you, man." "Yeah, you too." The door shut behind him. The laundromat seemed louder after he left. Machines spinning. Rain tapping. My thoughts doing the worst possible things. Mason sat back down, but not as close as before. His hands rested between his knees, fingers linked, eyes fixed on the floor. I stood there with his hoodie sleeves covering half my hands, suddenly aware of every inch of fabric. "You talk about me at work?" I tried to make it sound like a joke. It came out quieter. Mason looked up. For a second, I saw it again. The part of him that wanted to answer honestly. Then something pulled him back. Caleb runs his mouth. That is not an answer. His eyes dropped to the hoodie. Then away. "I guess I mentioned you." My heart did something stupid and hopeful. "Mention me how?" Mason let out a slow breath. "Ethan." Just my name. But it sounded like a warning. Like, please do not ask me this here. Like, please do not make me say something I do not know how to take back. I nodded, even though it hurt a little. "Right. Sorry." "No." He stood quickly, then stopped, like he did not know what to do with his own body. "I did not mean it like that." "It is fine." "It is not." The words came out rougher than usual. A couple near the dryers glanced over. Mason noticed and lowered his voice. "My dad is complicated. The shop is complicated. People knowing things gets complicated." There it was. Not rejection. Not exactly. But a wall. A real one. One I could not joke through. I swallowed, trying to act like my chest was not tightening. "Things." Mason looked at me, and the silence after that was brutal. Because neither of us needed to define it. Whatever this was. Whatever it was becoming. His face softened when he saw mine. He stepped closer, only a little. "I am not ashamed of you." My throat went dry. "I did not say you were." "You thought it." I looked away first. Because yes. For one awful second, I had. Mason reached out like he might touch my sleeve, then stopped himself. That almost hurt more. "I just need time." I nodded again. Too fast. Too fake. "Sure." He looked like he wanted to say more, but the owner came out from the back and called, "Dryer 6 is eating quarters again, boys." One of you strong enough to kick it back to life. The moment broke. Mason stepped away. I let him. For the rest of the night, we talked, but carefully. No teasing about dates. No knees touching. No questions too close to the truth. When I left, I gave him back the hoodie. Mason stared at it in his hands. You can keep it. I should not. The words were out before I could soften them. His eyes lifted to mine, and whatever he saw there made his face go quiet. I walked home in the rain with my own hoodie pulled tight around me, telling myself space was good. Space was smart. But by the time I reached my apartment, I knew the truth. Mason had not pushed me away completely, but he had reminded me there were people outside our little Sunday routine. People who could see. People who could ask questions. And for the first time, I wondered if the seat he kept saving for me was the only place he was brave enough to want me. The next Sunday, Mason was not in his chair. That was the first bad sign. The second was the coffee sitting on my seat. Black for him. Vanilla for me. Both untouched. I stood there in the doorway with my laundry bag on my shoulder, staring at those two cups like they were evidence of something I was too scared to name. He had come. He had saved my spot. Then he had left. I told myself not to care. People had lives. People got busy. People did not owe explanations to guys they only saw once a week at a laundromat. Still, my chest felt weird when I sat down. The chair was cold. The whole place felt off without him there, which made me angry at myself. I loaded my washer, opened my book, and read the same sentence 6 times without understanding any of it. 15 minutes later, the bell over the door rang. Mason walked in soaked from the rain, hair damp, jacket dark at the shoulders, breathing like he had walked fast. His eyes found me immediately. Not the chair. Not the coffee. Me. You came, he said. I looked at him over the top of my book, trying to sound normal. It is laundry night. His mouth tightened like he knew I was hiding behind that. He came closer, but stopped a few feet away. I thought you might not. That landed harder than it should have. I closed the book slowly. Because I gave your hoodie back? Mason looked down, jaw working once. Because of last week. The dryers hummed behind us. Someone near the front was arguing with the change machine. Normal sounds. Normal place. Nothing about the way Mason was looking at me felt normal. I picked up the vanilla coffee and turned it in my hands. You left coffee. I got here early. Then disappeared. I almost left. At least he said it honestly. That should have made me feel better. It did not. Why? Mason dragged a hand over his damp hair, then laughed once without humor. Because I am apparently good at fixing engines and terrible at anything that matters. I did not know what to say to that. So I said nothing. Mason sat in the chair beside mine, but he kept his hands to himself, elbows on his knees, gaze on the floor. He looked tired. Not physically exactly. More like someone who had spent a week arguing with himself and lost. My dad came by the shop, he started. After Caleb opened his mouth, my stomach dropped. About me? Not your name. Just enough. He rubbed his thumb against one of his rings. He does this thing where he acts like he is joking, but it is not a joke. Asking if I found myself a boyfriend. Asking if I am turning into someone he does not recognize. His voice stayed calm, which somehow made it worse. I told myself I did not care. I am 30. I pay my own rent. I live my own life. He glanced at me, then away. But I still heard him in my head all week. The coffee cup felt too cold in my hands. I hated that I understood. Not his dad. Not exactly. But the fear. The way one person's voice could get inside something good and make it feel dangerous. Mason. He shook his head before I could rescue him from the silence. I should have handled it better. With you. I swallowed. You got careful. I got scared. The words were quiet. Barely louder than the machines. But they changed the whole room. Mason looked at me then. Really looked. And there was no smirk to hide behind. No dry joke. No easy mechanic confidence. Just him. I saw your face when I stopped myself from touching you. I hated that I did that. My throat went tight. I tried to look away, but he kept going. And when you gave the hoodie back, I wanted to tell you not to. A pause. His fingers curled together. Not because it was mine. Because I liked seeing you in it. My heart kicked against my ribs. Hard. Stupid. Hopeful. I forced a breath through my nose. You could have said that. Yeah. His smile barely appeared, then faded. I know. Neither of us moved for a second. Then Mason reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the same dark hoodie, folded badly, like he had changed his mind about bringing it 12 times. He placed it on my lap. Not pushing. Not making me take it. Just offering. I do not want to go back to normal, he said. Whatever normal was. I stared down at the hoodie. My fingers brushed the fabric before I could stop them. Mason, I mean it. His voice got lower. The chair was not just a chair. The coffee was not just coffee. I was not joking when I asked if we were pretending. The laundromat seemed to shrink around us again. My pulse was loud in my ears. I wanted to say something smart, something smooth, something that made me sound less shaken than I was. Instead, I whispered. I thought maybe I was making it up. Mason's eyes softened so much it almost hurt. You were not. He leaned back a little, giving me room, but his knee brushed mine under the chairs. This time, it was not an accident. He waited. I waited. Then I let my knee stay there. His shoulders loosened like that tiny choice had given him air. We sat like that while my washer spun and the rain blurred the windows, not touching anywhere else, not needing to. It felt small. It felt huge. When my machine buzzed, Mason stood and picked up my basket like he always did. Only this time, when our hands met on the handle, he did not pull away. Neither did I. He looked at me, thumb resting lightly against mine. Tell me if I am moving too fast. My chest tightened. You are not. The corner of his mouth lifted, but his eyes stayed serious. Good. I should have been scared. I was scared. But underneath it, there was something warmer. Something steady. Something that sounded a lot like relief. Because for the first time, Mason was not just giving me signs and leaving me to guess. He was standing there with his hand near mine, admitting he had been scared too. And somehow that made everything feel more real, not less. For about 3 days, I let myself believe we were okay. Not officially anything. Not labeled. Not figured out. But okay. Mason texted me Tuesday morning with a picture of Dryer 3 and the words, "Still sounds haunted." I replied, "Do not provoke it." He sent back a blurry photo of his coffee with, "This tastes like motor oil. Thought you would approve." I smiled at my phone like an idiot in line at the grocery store and immediately hated myself for it. By Friday, we were texting about normal things. Work. Bad weather. A customer at his shop who tried to pay with a jar of coins. A client of mine who wanted a logo to feel more trustworthy but less honest. It felt easy. Too easy. That was probably why I started trusting it. Then Sunday came, and Mason was late. Not missing. Late. 15 minutes. Then 20. I checked my phone twice, then shoved it into my pocket like it had offended me. I was not going to be that guy. The guy who got one honest conversation and suddenly expected updates. The guy who saw a hoodie on his lap and decided it meant safety. I loaded my washer alone. Sat in my chair alone. Pretended not to watch the door every time the bell rang. When Mason finally walked in, he was with Caleb. They came in laughing about something, both damp from the rain, both smelling faintly like the shop. Mason saw me and his smile softened for half a second. Then Caleb clapped him on the shoulder. Told you your Sunday guy would be here. Mason's face changed. It was quick, but I caught it. That tiny shutdown. The wall from last week sliding back into place. He glanced around the laundromat like someone might have heard. Maybe no one did. Maybe everyone did. My stomach dropped anyway. Caleb, Mason warned low. Caleb's grin faded. Sorry. Bad joke. Mason did not look at me right away. That was the part that got me. Not Caleb. Not the words. Mason not looking at me. When he finally came over, he stood instead of sitting. Hey. I held my book tighter. Hey. Caleb gave an awkward wave from the change machine, clearly realizing he had walked into something he did not understand. Mason rubbed his thumb over one of his rings. Shop ran late. It is fine. Too fast. Too clean. His eyes narrowed a little, because he knew my fake voice now. That should have comforted me. It did not. Ethan. Seriously, it is fine. I looked down at my book even though I had not read a word. You do not have to explain. The silence after that sat heavy between us. Mason lowered himself into the chair beside mine, but there was space. Too much space. A week ago, his knee touching mine had felt like a confession. Now 6 inches felt like an answer. Do not do that, he murmured. I turned a page. Do what? Act like you do not care so I will not notice that you do. My throat tightened. I hated how accurate it was. I hated more that he said it gently. Maybe I am trying not to make this harder than it is. Mason looked at me for a long second. Is that what you think I am doing? I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. I do not know what you are doing. His face went still. The washer spun behind us. Caleb stayed by the front, pretending very hard to care about his phone. I kept my eyes on the page until the words blurred into nothing. Mason leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I told you I was scared. I know. That does not mean I am ashamed. I know. But I did not sound like I knew. That was the problem. Mason heard it too. His jaw tightened, not angry. Hurt. You think I regret it? I finally looked at him. The question was written all over his face before he even asked it. And because I was scared, because I had spent years getting good at leaving first emotionally, I gave him the worst possible answer. I shrugged. Would that be so crazy? Mason flinched. Barely. But I saw it. Immediately, I wanted to take it back. Too late. He stood, slow and quiet, like sudden movement would make things worse. I need some air. Mason. He stopped, but did not turn around. My hand was halfway lifted, useless in the space between us. I did not mean I did. Not fully, but enough. He nodded once, like he was accepting an apology I had not finished giving. Then he walked out into the rain. The bell over the door jingled, and suddenly the laundromat felt too bright, too loud, too public. Caleb looked from the door to me, then cursed softly under his breath. He is not good at this, he said. I stared at the window. Mason stood under the awning outside, shoulders hunched, rain hitting the pavement inches from his boots. Neither am I. Caleb came closer, not too close. For what it is worth, he talks about you like you were the first quiet thing he has had in a long time. That hit somewhere deep. I swallowed hard. Then why does he keep pulling back when people notice? Caleb's expression shifted, less playful now. Because his whole life, people noticing meant trouble. I looked at him. His dad. Caleb nodded. And other stuff. Small-town stuff. Shop stuff. Guys making jokes until they are not jokes anymore. He glanced toward the window. But he showed up today because he did not want you sitting here thinking he changed his mind. My chest hurt. Not dramatic. Just real. I looked outside again. Mason had his hands in his pockets, head down, like he was arguing with himself in the rain. For a second, I stayed where I was. Safe. Dry. Proud. Then I realized pride was just fear wearing nicer clothes. I stood so fast my book slid off my lap. Outside, the cold hit immediately. Mason turned when he heard the door. His eyes widened a little. Ethan, go back inside. You will get soaked. You left. His face tightened. I needed a second. I know. My voice came out rough. I thought you were pulling away again. Rain misted under the awning, dotting his shirt. He looked at me like the truth hurt him. I thought you were. And there it was. Both of us standing 6 feet apart, soaked at the edges, accusing each other of the same fear. I let out a shaky breath. I do not want to ruin this. Mason's eyes softened. Me neither. But I also cannot keep pretending I do not care when Caleb makes a joke, or when you look away, or when you sit too far from me. He took that in quietly. Then, slow enough for me to stop him, Mason reached out. His fingers brushed mine first. A question. I answered by letting my hand turn into his. He held on. Not hidden. Not dramatic. Just there, under the laundromat awning, with rain coming down and the windows bright behind us. Mason looked at our hands, then back at me. I am scared people will make it ugly. His thumb moved once against mine. But I am more scared of making you feel unwanted. My throat went tight. You did. He closed his eyes for half a second, like that landed exactly where it should. I am sorry. I nodded. Not because everything was fixed. It was not. But because he had not let go. And neither had I. We stood under the awning for a while, holding hands like neither of us knew what came next. Rain kept falling in sheets beyond the edge of the roof. Inside, the laundromat glowed too bright through the windows. All humming machines, and spinning clothes and Caleb pretending not to watch us through the glass. Mason's hand was warm around mine. Steady. Careful. Like he was afraid one wrong move would make me disappear. I should have felt brave. I mostly felt terrified. We should go inside, I whispered. Mason looked at the door, then back at me. Do you want to? I almost said yes. It was easier in there. We could fold laundry, make jokes, pretend the whole thing had not cracked open on the sidewalk. Instead, I heard myself say, no. His eyes stayed on mine. Okay. That was all. Just okay. But he did not let go. We moved to the side of the building, where the rain was quieter and the yellow light from the laundromat only reached halfway. Not hidden exactly. Just less public. Less bright. Mason leaned against the brick wall, still holding my hand, his thumb brushing once over my knuckles before going still. I keep messing this up, he said. No joke. No shield. Just the truth. I swallowed. I am not exactly handling it perfectly. You are allowed to be mad. I am not mad. Mason gave me a look. Tired, soft, almost amused. Ethan. I looked down at our hands. I am scared. The words came out small, but at least they came out. His fingers tightened around mine. Not hard. Just enough to tell me he heard it. Of me? No. That answer came fast because it was the only one I was sure of. Of wanting this, and then finding out there is only room for me here. I nodded toward the laundromat. On Sundays. In the corner. When nobody important is watching. Mason's face changed. That hurt him. I could see it. But he did not get defensive this time. He just took it in, jaw tight, eyes lowered. That is what it felt like. I breathed out. Sometimes. He nodded slowly. The rain filled the pause between us. My dad called me after Caleb joked about you. His voice stayed low. He asked if I was making a fool of myself. Asked if I was trying to prove something. Then he said people at the shop talk. He looked away, blinking once like he hated admitting it. I thought I was past caring. But you are not. No. He rubbed his free hand over his face. Not always. That honesty hit harder than some perfect answer would have. I did not want perfect. I wanted real. Even if real was messy and standing outside a laundromat in the rain. Mason turned back to me. But I need you to hear this. I did not pull away because I was unsure about you. My chest tightened. Then why? Because you were the first thing in a long time that felt good before I had a plan for it. He gave a quiet, rough laugh. And I hate not having a plan. That almost made me smile. Almost. You plan laundry? Obviously. Of course you do. His thumb moved again, slower this time. I noticed your chair before I knew your name. Then I noticed your book. Then your face when Dryer 3 started acting possessed. Then the coffee. The chips. How you pretend you do not care when you care about everything. My throat went tight. Mason looked at me like he was done hiding behind half sentences. I was looking for reasons to talk to you before you ever gave me one. For a second, I could not speak. I had spent weeks telling myself I was reading too much into every small thing. The chair. The coffee. The hoodie. His knee against mine. His hand almost staying. And now he was standing in front of me, saying none of it had been accidental. Mason. I know. He nodded once, like he was bracing himself. It is a lot. No. I stepped closer without meaning to. Our shoes almost touched. It is just. I thought I was the only one losing my mind. His mouth softened. You were not. We stood there, inches apart, rain misting against the sides of our jackets. My hand was still in his. My heart was doing too much. Mason's gaze dropped to our hands, then rose to my face. I do not want to keep acting normal. That sentence went through me like a door opening. What does that mean? It means I want to see you somewhere that is not next to a washing machine. His voice was quiet, but steady. It means I want to text you because I want to talk to you, not because Dryer 3 is making a noise. It means when Caleb calls you my Sunday guy, I do not want my first instinct to be looking around to see who heard. He paused, swallowed. I want my first instinct to be saying your name. I looked down because if I kept looking at him, I was going to do something embarrassing, like feel everything on my face. That sounds a lot like a date. Yeah. His hand stayed steady. I know. I looked back up. Are you asking me? Mason's expression shifted, nervous again. Not scared away. Just exposed. I am trying to. That broke something in me. Not in a bad way. More like all the tension I had been carrying finally had somewhere to go. I laughed once, quiet and shaky. You are really bad at it. I fix motorcycles, Ethan. I did not say I was smooth. You bought me chips for 3 weeks before asking me out. That was strategy. That was fear with snacks. His smile came then. Real. Warm. The kind that made the whole ugly parking lot feel softer than it had any right to feel. Maybe both. I let my shoulder bump his, gentle, testing. He did not move away. Friday, I said. His eyes searched mine. Friday. There is a diner near my apartment. It has terrible coffee and decent pie. Mason's smile faded into something quieter. You are saying yes? My chest hurt a little at how carefully he asked. Like he still expected me to step back. I did not. I squeezed his hand. I am saying yes. Mason looked at our hands for a second, then closed his eyes like he needed to hold on to that. When he opened them, the fear was still there. Mine too. But it was not the only thing anymore. Friday, he repeated. Friday. We did not kiss. Not yet. The moment almost leaned that way, close and warm and silent. But then the laundromat door opened and Caleb called, "Your clothes are absolutely done, and I am not folding anything with emotional tension on it." I groaned. Mason laughed under his breath, forehead dipping for a second like he was trying to hide it. But when we walked back inside, he did not drop my hand right away. Caleb saw. The owner probably saw. Maybe the whole room saw. Mason's fingers stayed wrapped around mine until we reached the chairs. And for once, he did not look away first. Friday was the first time I saw Mason somewhere that did not smell like detergent. That should not have felt like a big deal, but it did. I got to the diner 10 minutes early, then immediately regretted it because sitting alone in a booth gave me too much time to think. The place was small and bright, with red vinyl seats, a counter full of pie stands, and a waitress who called everyone sweetheart no matter their age. I kept checking the door like a nervous teenager. When Mason walked in, wearing a dark green jacket instead of his work clothes, my whole body went still. He spotted me and smiled. Not the careful laundromat smile. Not the one he used when he was trying to hide too much. This one was open, a little nervous, completely real. "Hey," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Hey." For a second, we just looked at each other. No washing machines. No save chair. No Caleb yelling from the change machine. Just us and two sticky menus between us. Mason glanced around. "So this is the terrible coffee place. Show some respect. Their pie is doing its best." "I respect pie." "Good." That was almost a deal breaker. He laughed, and the sound settled something in me. The date was not perfect. Thank God. Perfect would have scared me more. Mason spilled sugar on the table. I knocked my fork on the floor. The waitress brought him sweet tea instead of coffee and called us "you boys," with a smile that made Mason look down at his napkin, embarrassed but not ashamed. We talked, really talked, about the shop, my work, his dad, my habit of making jokes when I wanted to run. Mason admitted he almost turned around twice before coming inside. I admitted I had changed shirts 3 times and still hated the one I picked. "For the record," he murmured, eyes moving over me softly, "I like the shirt." My ears went warm. Dangerous amount of charm for a guy who asked me out beside a laundromat dumpster. It was a romantic dumpster. It was recycling. Even better. Environmentally responsible. I laughed so hard I had to look away. And that was the thing. It felt easy again. But not easy like we were pretending. Easy like the truth had finally stopped blocking the door. After dinner, we walked outside into the cold. No rain this time. Just clear air, street lights, and cars passing on the wet-looking pavement. Mason walked beside me with his hands in his pockets. I could tell he wanted to reach for mine. I could also tell he was waiting. Always careful. Always giving me room. So I stopped making him guess. I slipped my hand into his. Mason looked down like he did not fully believe it, then looked at me. His fingers closed around mine. Warm. Steady. No pulling away. We walked like that for 3 blocks. Nobody clapped. Nobody stared. The world did not stop. That almost made it better. "You okay?" I asked quietly. Mason looked ahead, then squeezed my hand once. "Yeah." A pause. "I am getting there." I liked that answer more than some perfect brave one. Getting there was honest. Getting there meant he was trying. By Sunday, I still went to the laundromat. Same time. Same laundry bag. Same cracked blue chair in the corner. Only this time, when I opened the door, Mason was already there with 2 coffees and my favorite chips balanced on the washer. My seat was empty. He looked up, and his smile came slow. "Saved your spot." I stood there for a second, letting those words land differently. The first time he said them, I thought he meant a chair. Then I thought maybe he meant a routine. Now, looking at him, I understood it had always been more than that. I set my laundry down and walked over, but I did not sit in the blue chair. Not right away. Instead, I sat beside him, in his space, close enough that our shoulders touched. Mason glanced at the empty chair, then at me. "Your spot is right there. I know. You are not taking it." I looked at him, trying not to smile too much. Maybe I like this one better. His face softened in a way that made my chest ache, but gently. He reached down, found my hand between our chairs, and held it where anyone could see if they bothered to look. I waited for him to let go when the owner walked past. He did not. I waited when Caleb showed up to drop off Mason's keys and immediately grinned at us. Mason did not let go then either. Caleb lifted both hands. No comments. I value my life. Mason rolled his eyes. "Smart man." Caleb pointed at me. "You treating him right, Sunday guy?" I expected Mason to tense. He did not. He only looked at me, thumb brushing my knuckles. His name is Ethan. It was such a simple thing. Barely anything. But it hit me harder than any big speech could have. Because he said it clearly, calmly, like there was no reason to hide it. Like I was not a secret squeezed into the corner of a laundromat. I was Ethan. The guy whose seat he saved. The guy whose coffee he remembered. The guy whose hand he did not let go of. Caleb's grin turned softer. Good to know. Then he left us alone. Mason looked almost embarrassed after, but he stayed close. Too much. I shook my head. No, his shoulders eased. The dryers hummed. Rain started lightly against the windows, gentle this time. Around us, people folded clothes, fed quarters into machines, carried baskets in and out. Life kept moving in its small, ordinary way. And maybe that was what made it feel real. Not a huge confession. Not some movie ending. Just Mason sitting beside me on a Sunday night, holding my hand in the place where we had spent weeks pretending not to want exactly that. I leaned into him, just enough for our shoulders to press together. So, I murmured, are you still saving my spot every week? Mason looked at the empty blue chair, then back at me. His smile was quiet. Certain. Yeah, he said, but not because I need an excuse anymore. I rested my head back against the wall and let myself breathe. For the first time in a long time, I did not try to explain it away. I did not tell myself it meant nothing. I did not reach for a safer version of the story. Mason's hand was in mine. His shoulder was warm against mine. The chair was still there, waiting if I ever wanted it. But I did not. Because somewhere between broken dryers, bad coffee, rainy Sundays, and one tattooed guy who kept paying attention, I had stopped looking for a place to sit. I had found a place to stay.